I always thought the scariest place in a mansion was the basement. I was wrong. It was my mother-in-law's smile when she realized I wasn't going to break as easily as she'd planned. My name's Camille Rutherford, 32, chef by profession, survivor by necessity. When I married Gregory, golden son of the Rutherford dynasty, I thought I was stepping into a fairy tale. What I got was a masterclass in psychological warfare. The Rutherford estate sprawled across 40 acres of Connecticut countryside. Old money. Real money. The kind that comes with senators on speed dial and judges who owe favors. And ruling over it all, Eleanor Rutherford. Eleanor was 73 years old and sharp as a blade. Silver hair in a perfect chignon. Cheekbones that could cut glass. The kind of woman who could destroy you with impeccable manners. At first, she was the picture of gracious acceptance. "Welcome to the family, dear," she'd said at our engagement dinner. "I do hope you'll settle in well," but I caught the subtext. Settle, not thrive, not flourish. Settle. The first 6 months were a careful dance. Tea in the conservatory where she'd tell me about appropriate charities. Shopping trips where she'd steer me toward classic styles. Dinner parties where she'd introduce me as Gregory's little chef wife. Always diminishing, always subtle. I played along because I loved Gregory. Because I thought time would smooth the edges. I was wrong. The first real warning came at Christmas dinner. Extended family, old friends, the usual suspects from their social circle. I'd spent days preparing a special menu fusion cuisine that honored both tradition and innovation. The meal was perfect. Even the sour-faced aunts complimented the food. But when Mrs. Ashworth, a family friend, asked about my little restaurant dreams, Eleanor's smile turned arctic. "Oh, Camille's much too busy being a proper wife now, aren't you, dear?" The conversation moved on. But I saw the look she gave Gregory. A look that said, "Control your wife." That night I told Gregory about my plans to open a bistro downtown. I'd been saving, planning, dreaming. His response was lukewarm at best. "Maybe we should wait," he said. "Let you settle into the family first." There was that word again. Settle. Over the following months, small obstacles began appearing. The business loan I'd been promised fell through. The bank manager was reassessing their portfolio. The perfect location I'd found was suddenly unavailable. My mentor from culinary school stopped returning my calls. Nothing I could prove. Nothing I could point to and say this is sabotage. But I knew. Eleanor was always sympathetic when these setbacks occurred. "Oh, honey, maybe it's just not meant to be right now. Why don't you focus on being happy here?" The accident happened on a Tuesday in March. I was alone in the kitchen testing recipes for Gregory's birthday dinner. Professional-grade knives, German steel, beautiful balance. A set Eleanor had given me for Christmas. "For your cooking projects," she'd said. I was working on julienne vegetables when Eleanor appeared. She did that, moved through the house like a ghost suddenly materializing in doorways. "Working hard, I see." I looked up, smiled. "Just trying to perfect the birthday menu." She moved closer, examining my knife work. "You know, dear Gregory's grandmother was quite the enthusiast, too." "Oh, I'd love to hear about her cooking." Eleanor's smile was sharp. She had such ambitious plans. A catering business, I believe. Very determined. Something in her tone made me pause. "What happened?" "Kitchen accident. Very tragic." She was found at the bottom of the cellar stairs. Carrying a heavy pot, they think. Lost her balance. The knife felt suddenly heavy in my hand. "How awful." "Yes. Ambition can be so dangerous, don't you think?" I was reaching across the counter for the pepper mill when it happened. Eleanor shifted closer, ostensibly to get a better look at my technique. Her hip bumped the counter edge, which shook the cutting board. My hand mid-slice jerked sideways. The blade bit deep into my palm. I gasped, dropping the knife. Blood welled up bright and fast. Eleanor didn't rush to help. She watched for a heartbeat just long enough for me to see something flicker across her face. Satisfaction. Then she was all concern. "Oh my goodness! How clumsy here, let me—" She handed me a dish towel, already reaching for her phone. "We need to call someone immediately." The paramedic said I was lucky. Deep cut, but no tendon damage. 12 stitches. Tetanus shot. Keep it clean and dry. Gregory was white with worry when he got home. "How did this happen?" "Poor thing was rushing," Eleanor said before I could answer. "I told her to slow down, but you know how eager she gets about her cooking." That word, eager, like it was a character flaw. The paramedic nodded knowingly. "Kitchen accidents are more common than people think. Usually happens when cooks get overconfident with their knife skills." After they left, Eleanor made tea with her usual efficiency. "You'll want to be more careful from now on," she said, setting the cup before me. Kitchens can be treacherous places. I stared at her across the pristine marble island, at her perfectly composed face, her steady hands. "Yes," I said quietly. "They can be." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment, the way she'd moved, the timing, the look in her eyes afterward, but I had no proof. Nothing but suspicion and a wounded hand. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I started paying attention, really paying attention. I noticed how Eleanor's accidents seemed to cluster around women who threatened the family dynamic. Gregory's ex-girlfriend who'd broken her ankle on the tennis court right after announcing her promotion to partner at her law firm. The young wife of Gregory's cousin, who'd had a nasty fall from her horse a week after mentioning her political campaign. I noticed how Eleanor collected information. Casual questions about my schedule, my plans, my friendships. Always friendly, always concerned. I noticed how she positioned herself, how she moved through spaces, how she created situations. And I started being very, very careful. The breakthrough came 2 months later at a family dinner party. Eleanor was holding court with her usual circle of society ladies, discussing the challenges of modern wives. "They simply don't understand the importance of family unity," she was saying. "Take poor Sarah, for instance. Sarah, Gregory's ex-fiancée, the one who died in the stair accident. I was supposed to be in the kitchen checking on dessert. Instead, I lingered in the hallway listening. Such a headstrong girl," one of the ladies murmured. "Indeed. Always talking about her career, her independence. Even after Gregory made it clear the family needed her to be more present. And then that terrible accident. Yes. Though between us, I sometimes wonder if it wasn't partly self-inflicted. The stress of trying to fit into a world she didn't understand. Some people simply crack under pressure." The conversation moved on to safer topics. But I'd heard enough. Eleanor wasn't just dangerous. She was systematic. And she was rewriting history to make her victims complicit in their own destruction. I went home that night and made a decision. I was going to disappear. Not dramatically. Not obviously. I was going to fade away so gradually that no one would notice until it was too late. I started with small changes. Mentioning headaches at dinner. Begging off social events. Spending more time resting in our room. When Gregory asked if I was all right, I was vague. Tired. Stressed. Maybe I should see someone. Eleanor was sympathetic, of course. "Poor dear. The adjustment to this life can be so overwhelming." She even recommended a therapist. Dr. Morrison, a family friend, someone who understood our kind of people. I made the appointment, went twice, complained about feeling isolated, misunderstood, like I didn't belong. Dr. Morrison was very understanding, very concerned about my adjustment issues. The prescription pad came out at the second session. Something to help with anxiety. Something to help me sleep. I filled the prescriptions but never took the pills. Instead, I started planning. I opened a bank account Eleanor didn't know about. Started moving small amounts of money cash back from grocery runs, tips from the rare catering jobs I still did. I found a lawyer in Boston. Paid cash for a consultation. Explained my situation without names or details. You need evidence, he told me. Documentation, witnesses, something that proves a pattern. Evidence, that was the problem. Eleanor was too smart to leave obvious traces. Too careful to confess. Too connected to be challenged directly. But she had one weakness, pride. Eleanor couldn't resist explaining how clever she was. How necessary her actions were for the family. How grateful everyone should be for her. Guidance. She just needed the right audience. Someone she thought was already broken. I started playing the part she wanted to see. The fragile daughter-in-law cracking under pressure. Taking the prescribed medication that made me drowsy and compliant. Apologizing for everything. Agreeing with her suggestions. Eleanor began to relax around me. Started speaking more freely. You know, dear, I've been thinking about your future, she said one afternoon as we had tea. This life clearly isn't making you happy. I'm trying to adjust. Of course you are. But some people simply aren't meant for certain roles. Take Sarah Gregory's previous fiancé. Lovely girl, but completely wrong for our family. I kept my voice small, defeated. What happened to her? Oh, just couldn't handle the pressure? Started making poor decisions, drinking too much, taking risks. Eleanor sipped her tea delicately. The accident was almost inevitable, really. Accident. She fell down the stairs at the Vineyard house. Tragic, but... Eleanor shrugged elegantly. Natural selection, one might say. I stared into my teacup, hiding my expression. That's awful. What's awful is when people refuse to recognize their limitations. When they keep pushing against boundaries that exist for everyone's protection. Her voice was gentle, understanding, completely terrifying. I would never want you to suffer the way Sarah did, Camille. Which is why I think perhaps it's time to consider other options. Other options. A quiet separation. A chance to find a life that actually suits you. I know Gregory would be devastated initially, but in time he'd understand it was for the best. She reached across the table and patted my hand. I could help arrange everything. Make sure you're comfortable. Taken care of. All very discreet, of course. I nodded like a broken woman accepting defeat. But inside I was recording every word. Not literally, Eleanor was too smart for that. But I was memorizing. Cataloging. Building a case that no one would believe without proof. So I decided to create some. The next week I told Eleanor I'd been thinking about her suggestion. That maybe she was right about the separation. She was delighted, supportive, ready to help with every detail. I think a little retreat might be just the thing, she said. Somewhere quiet where you can reflect on your options. I know just the place, a lovely facility in Vermont. Very private. Very understanding of sensitive situations. A facility, not a spa, not a retreat. A place where inconvenient people went to disappear. That sounds perfect, I told her. When should I go? Oh, soon, I think. This weekend, perhaps I can make the arrangements. That night, I made my own arrangements. I called my lawyer in Boston, told him everything, every conversation, every implication, every threat disguised as kindness. It's all circumstantial, he warned. Suggestive, but not conclusive. I know, but it's enough to ask questions, to look deeper. What do you want me to do? I want you to contact the authorities in Martha's Vineyard. Have them take another look at Sarah Morrison's death. Look for patterns. Other accidents involving the family. And you, I'm going to disappear, but not the way Eleanor thinks. Friday afternoon, I packed a small bag and said goodbye to Gregory. He was in meetings all day, conveniently arranged by his mother, I was sure. Eleanor drove me to the train station herself. I'm so proud of you for making this difficult decision, she said as we sat in her Mercedes. It takes real strength to know when to let go. I looked at her sitting there in her Chanel suit, manicured hands on the steering wheel, speaking of strength and letting go. She really believed she was being kind. That was perhaps the most terrifying thing of all. Thank you, I said, for everything. She smiled, genuine warmth in her eyes. Take care of yourself, dear. And remember, sometimes the greatest gift we can give the people we love is our absence. I got out of the car and walked into the station. Then I walked right through it and out the other side where my real ride was waiting. 3 days later, Eleanor received a call from the Vermont facility. Mrs. Rutherford had never arrived for her appointment. By the time they realized I was missing, I was already in California staying with my cousin and working under my maiden name. 6 months later, the investigation into Sarah Morrison's death was reopened. Then Gregory's cousin's wife came forward about her riding accident. Then others. Eleanor Rutherford was never charged with anything. The evidence was always circumstantial. The connections always deniable. But her world began to crack. Social invitations dried up. Board positions were quietly reassigned. The family's influence built on reputation and respectability started to crumble. Gregory divorced me in absentia. I didn't contest it. A year later, I opened my restaurant in San Francisco. Small place. Good food. My name on the door. Eleanor sent a card to the opening. Just her signature on expensive stationery. I kept it. A reminder of what happens when predators mistake their prey. They say the kitchen is the heart of the home. In mine, it became the place where I learned that survival isn't about fighting back. Sometimes it's about being smart enough to disappear before anyone realizes you were never really there.